2024 Sites and Facilities meeting for April 24th, 2024. And we have a couple of things on the agenda for tonight, so I don't want to waste too much time since we have another meeting right after this. So I'm going to turn it right over.
Okay, so thank you, everybody. Charger, I think I might be in your seat, but we're just gonna do that right there. You know, we've been, I think the last couple times that this group has gotten together, there's been some discussion around the Carter site and the naming of the building and so on and so forth. We've been having some conversations also about the site itself and the usage of the square footage, the space utilization, and particularly in light of a couple things. One, you know, looking at everything with a scrutinizing eye because of the budget situation that we're in, but also a revisiting of the plan itself, as we have, it's been quite a while since the original conception of the plan, and so taking a second look at our enrollment, and really trying to maximize everything that we're doing over on the site and on the campus. I think very early on, I think we all gasped at the cost of a 360-seat middle school, and the scalability of, you know, really a lack of economy of scale when you're talking about having to bring all of the same staff setup over nurse, secretaries, custodians, social worker, psychologists, you know, auxiliary staff for 360. The same amount of staff that you bring over to do a school setup can be the same for a 700-seat facility. So you really lose a lot of scalability in that model. So it really wasn't quite a setup that I think anybody was really comfortable with, but it was part of a very early project idea with a population bubble that was moving through. So it was a thoughtful process to help with a population group that was coming through. However, that group is kind of in our middle school right now and is trailing into the high school, which is causing kind of a little bit of overcrowding at the Broadway Middle School, and also the big clog that we have up at Danbury High School. And so in looking at some of the enrollment numbers, I'll talk about two things. One, a new idea to utilize the space for some economy of scale, space utilization, return on investment, but then also some exciting things about what we can put in there, and then a little bit about the enrollment pattern that's coming, where I think we can take a step back and say maybe we don't quite need all of the space that we thought we did, and can we slow down a little bit and reassess some of that. So I'll get into it. Maybe I gave all the good parts away, but make it moving here. So obviously this is the Danbury Career Academy. This is the architect scale drawing. We're super excited about it. Kind of an early rendition. I think one of those little components has been since changed, but generally that is what it looks like. So the original idea was the entire site is that it was housed the Board of Ed offices. The high school side would have about 1,040 students, and with 2 academies, and again the other main site would have 4 academies, and then the middle school side of that building would have 360 students. And that was the part when you saw the presentations around the cost to open up both the high school and the middle school side, they were almost equivalent. And you're like, how is that possible with 1,040 seats versus 360? And it's because they had existing staff at Danbury High School that would also come over to the new site. Not all the staff, but existing teaching staff that would come over. You still need secretaries, you still need nurses, you still need custodians. So that was the original plan. And on the middle school side of that original plan, it's only 360 students, so you're only pulling a few kids off of each grade level at each school. So it's not enough to make that impact for the level of investment that we were going to be putting into that. And so a revised plan and revised thinking is to still create the scale, the economy of scale, by utilizing the space for the high school, more contiguous space, the staff that exists at Danbury High School, because Danbury High School still has a lot of kids left in there, and so this would thin them out a little bit more and create that more ideal conditions than what we have now, obviously, and even in the original plan. And have 3 academies, add a 3rd academy to that model, continue with the model, and utilize that space for BOE and high school. And so then the question is, well, what about our middle school overcrowding problem? Mm-hmm. Are we still going to handle that? So here's where it gets, I'll get to the numbers in a second. So again, the original proposed plan for 360, The plan was only meant to serve a small amount of students. The use of the building site for the high school creates more economy of scale, as I mentioned several times. And we still need to explore some middle school options, because we do have, even though the numbers that we think will be going to be passing us by right now, that bubble that's in there, we have some concerns about a grade 2. You've heard us talk about a grade 2 bubble, the group that's coming up that has a much larger enrollment, over 1,000 students. So what's going to happen if we don't do this plan and this bubble comes up? Are we going to be okay? So here are the high school enrollment projections in the original plan. So right now, you had 3,850 at the high school. When we opened up Cardis under the original plan, with ACE kind of remaining at 80, that would still leave 2,730 students at Denver High School. With a revised plan to make everything on the Cardis side a high school plan, you would have 2,370. So a little more breathing room at the high school, better utilization of the spaces that are there, less crowding, less fighting, it all goes together. So the middle school enrollment projections, so if you take a look at the total capacity on the last line, on the bottom, so total capacity 28, 24, all the way across. And what that number is comprised of is Rogers Park capacity, Broadview Middle School capacity, and Westside Middle School capacity. So there's 3 numbers. So when you combine those 3 numbers together, it's 28, 24. So that's what we have to work with currently. And the capacity is usually determined by a space utilization study. We've done those in the past. We're due for another one, which will happen in June, and I'll talk about that in a second. So I want to just point out a couple of things. The bubble that we're talking about, I don't have a laser on here, so let me get up. If you look at the 27-28 column, that 10-10 number in grade 6, that's your current grade, was your current grade 2 students. So that's the bubble. They'll hit, those second graders will hit the middle schools in 27-28. So I just wanted to point out. And so to follow them, see where it goes 10-10, 10-10, 10-10 across, you're following them through middle school. And as they move through the middle school, you take into consideration the other numbers of the other grade levels and you add those up. So so currently right now, 24-20, next year for 24-25, we will have projected in our internal projections, meaning the kids that we have in seats right now, is 2,666. The SLAM study, which are our demographers, they predicted at the last time that we did the study in 2022 that we would have 2,783. So, somewhere in there lies the truth, and we get kids rolling in all the time. So those numbers always fluctuate. In 25-26, our capacity is 28-24. We'll have 27-81, 26-27. You can see the number there. Where it starts to get very tight is 27-28. Now we're still okay, but it's tight. And where it gets kind of, hot, a little bit on the hotter side, but not super hot, is 28-29 and 29-30. And if you look at the numbers, remember our capacity is 2,824 for the red zone there. And if you look at the number, the high projected number that we're supposed to get from SLAM, according to that study, we'll have 2,876. Currently in the seats right now, physically, we have 2,851 that we think will roll up. But when you take the 30 or 40 kids difference there and across 3 schools, it's not that much, I think, to to have an entire site dedicated for millions of dollars to do that. This is kind of a situation where you kind of hold your breath for a year or 2, you get a couple extra desks, we make sure that we're utilizing the space appropriately, and that we're maximizing our classrooms appropriately, and creating some space, rather than maybe adding on somewhere. I mean, I'm not saying we might not have to do that, because we're still 28, 29, 30 away. And what will determine that will be that June 2024 SLAM study, where they come back in and they say, okay, it's now 2024, and we're going to do a projection. We're going to do the next round of projections. Now, those projections could go up higher, and we may want to come back and have a conversation about, are we going to need some portables somewhere, or a couple of classrooms, or can we get by? Or maybe they go down, and we don't need anything, which would be amazing and ideal. But after that kind of tight squeeze there, the numbers start to trail off. So the numbers that you see up in the orange there are on the high projection numbers. So if that's true, if that holds true, you know, it would actually be a waste of money to build on the middle school side when we kind of could get through a couple of years of some type, you know, a tight building, but I don't think anything like, you know, what the high school is experiencing, but, you know, certainly as a teacher, we've had those bigger years and smaller years or fluctuations. So that's kind of some of the rationale behind some of the changes, and we just think it's a better use of space, taxpayer money, but also there's some, here's the cost, I'll get to the great idea at the end. So the cost difference on this, just look at the grand total overall. That's the difference between adding the middle school staffing and the high school staffing. So when you add everything all together, 13,823,000. But when you just create the high school space, it's 11,133. So that's, again, 30 less FTEs are needed when you use the high school model. And so it's almost, you know, it's over $2.5 million year over year, right? And then in addition to that, you know, you have the idea that you've got, you know, there's 30 less FTEs for the city. There's pension, there's medical, all that stuff. We're self-insured, so it hits in many different ways that we haven't even calculated yet. That would be far greater. In addition, we'll take a much closer look at the transportation, because I also think there could be transportation savings in there as well. But we'll have to study that, and we're just getting in the middle of the process of redoing our transportation contract. So I think that there's going to be some savings in there on top of that, in addition to the savings on just not having 30 additional FTEs on the books. So I think that that's going to be great. This is just another way to look at it. What I did was the green boxes that you see under the revised column is what the staffing is the difference between the high school staffing and the other middle school staffing. This is just another way to look at it. So if you go straight across at a full high school model 912, you can see the revised costs there. It still totals up to the same. It's just a different way of looking at it. So overall, it's a pretty big savings to head in this direction. And
Do you want us to ask questions?
yeah,
now,
I'll stop.
or would you rather?
I'll take them
Do you
now.
want to take them now?
Yeah.
Okay. Rich?
A couple of years ago, I think, I was off the board at that time, the budget was reduced for the concept here was like $13 million split, $6 million, $6.5 apiece.
Yeah.
And I was outraged that it came to like $20,000 for 300 kids. And I went to Listing, we had a conversation, and you said that's the way it was written in the legislative body, or the way the body issue was done. And I said, well, for the taxpayer of Danbury, that's a significant savings. Has that legal department been satisfied now that we're able to get away with not having this in the middle school?
Yeah, so it's my understanding, the original legislation was a 612, it was written in 612. It had since been revised, it had gone through an iteration, and so, then I had, Tony went and investigated it and found that that's no longer in the current iteration of the legislation, that the high school component piece, that the 612 wasn't the necessity, that we could actually do a 912, and it would be, I don't know if you want to speak to that, but is that accurate?
Yeah,
Yeah.
we vetted that out,
Yeah.
and the language is pretty open to that aspect.
So, in much better shape in that area. That was a barrier.
Yeah,
Right.
that was, exactly.
Yeah, he's got a great memory, because
Yes.
we did struggle with that.
Yeah.
Anybody else on the committee?
Okay.
Anybody else from the committee question? Monica?
Yes, I do.
Okay.
So, looking at this chart right here, I understand the 6 through 8, raising that out, no middle school.
Yeah.
In the core staff, have we made any adjustments? I know we're adding another academy, right? You're saying
Yes.
add an academy, but have we made any, as far as the staffing,
Sure.
the detail of who that is, have we made any adjustment based on the suggestions that came from the board earlier? Or do you just want to talk about the building itself? Do you want to talk about the
I just want
staffing
to
yet?
clarify what staffing you're.
We have been given a list of what staff would be required for that transition to the academies.
Yes,
We talked about administrators, we talked.
yes.
And some of the discussion that we had at the board was, could some of those positions be shared?
Okay, you're
And-
talking about the administrative, in the new, in this year's budget, we had, I'm trying,
Go ahead.
in this year's budget, we had those 0.5 administrator positions in there. And the answer is, yes, what makes it a lot easier is we will not need, it won't be a principal of the academy, it's just an assistant principal. So that's one. So we're not trying to open up the middle school academy, so needing an administrator for that and an administrator for the other side, but we still need one administrator for the additional, so if we're adding an academy, there still needs to be supervision there, so it would be, an assistant principal level position, instead of having a middle school principal, which is what we had originally listed there.
I think to her point,
Try to clarify, maybe I'm not getting what you're,
That's right.
I think,
You have a
yeah,
question?
I think you need, Juanita was trying to refer to early on, you were asked about sharing, right? And then we're talked about between the middle school and high school at that one location,
Oh.
sharing. Maybe I misunderstood you.
So we have people, I believe, I don't know if they're already on the budget, to make the transition this spring. And that's right, people going up.
so
In the
those,
spring.
that was to get the building open. And hopefully that they would be the leaders of the two, the middle schools and the high schools, to get those, to help, with the scheduling and getting everything set. But in this model, it's contiguous kind of with the high school, so it's not, there's not a need to have separate, different type, it would be, so right now, we would have two of our current assistant principals come over to the new site in the original proposed plan. There would need to be a third person that would come over. So the administrative staffing piece, do we need two different people to come over to get it started for the next school year? No.
That. And there's been an increase, and I'm assuming that's because of the staffing of the third academy, right? From the original cost to the revised.
It's been a decrease, 30 FTE decrease. So in the original model, we had, so for example, we would have to have 15 teachers. So if you're a middle school model, the 360, you need 15 core teachers, just core teachers alone, to come over. And because there's not enough staff there to take the current staff out, to separate them, they're brand new staff. You have to hire 15 new cluster teachers, if you will. In this model, you're probably bringing over like 7 core teachers because they already exist at Danbury High School. A lot of the staff, we would just be removing the kids and the majority of the teachers that go with the kids over to the new site. You still are going to have needs, you're still going to have some teachers, but you're also going to have, you're going to bring some staff over, but you're still going to need a secretary. Because there's 360 students there, you still need a half-time nurse, you're going to still need some of those things. Do you need 5 secretaries for the middle school? No, you probably only need 2 or 3. So the staffing numbers decrease significantly because it's a contiguous, it's all high school. So you're only going to need 1 attendance secretary as opposed to having 1 in each of the different things along those lines. So overall, 30, we're estimating that we have 30, the need for 30 less by making it high school because they're coming over as opposed to hiring all new staff at the middle school. And the net difference is about $2.6 million.
Okay, I guess for me, I don't know about anybody else, I need to see the details of the new staffing and what that means.
Sure.
As opposed to what the original plan was that we received.
Okay, sure.
Okay, to really, and with the, same thing with the administration, I can the transportation is fine. Yeah, I would like to see what that staffing and administration means.
Rich? I'm sorry.
Dr. Kessler, what is the latest number of academies? I'm confused, first it was 6, now is it 7 or?
So we have a freshman academy at the high school.
Okay.
So that's a freshman, that's for all freshmen, it's not necessarily themed. Okay, so we call it freshman academy.
That's
Which is, right, which is, so you have 4 main themes at the high school plus the freshman academy, and then you have 2 academies over at the Hart site.
Any questions from committee members before I open it up?
Can you just maybe, have you had the opportunity to look into the transportation? I see that it says there's savings, and so is that just rerouting?
There could be, and that's what we have to do, to get a plan from them to say, okay, we'll be at 360 high school kids versus the middle school kids. What does that do to the routes? What does it do to the tiers? And because in addition, we would be, we'd be changing it significantly, the routes from Demery High School with Cardis. They have to redo a whole plan. They would have to redo a whole plan. So they're gonna have to run all new numbers and give us a projection of how many buses at a certain time we would need, as opposed to, the existing one, which was high school, middle school, elementary. This is now more high school, a little less middle school, and how does that change the tiers and the runs and the number of buses? Yeah, so we're still gonna study that.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Does anybody who's here as our guest want to contribute or have anything to add to Kara's presentation about this change over? Before I open it up?
I think the next couple of slides coming through
Okay.
will probably,
Okay. First, anybody not on the committee? Gladys, do you have a question?
As we look at this, the new revision, and we're talking about the 360, if I understand this right, 360 students are middle school students. So they're going to be continuing at their middle school. So, and I think when we first started talking about the academy, and I know my concern was, the 6th grade, especially when you're talking about boys and girls, intermingling with those 9th and 10th and older kids, and how stuff is carried on with kids. So my understanding is, I don't know all the ifs and ands of this thing, but to have them stay in a sort of their area, in middle school area, and let the high school stay in their place, but we're talking about a 3rd academy at the career.
Correct.
Okay.
Correct. And to your point, Ms. Cooper, it makes it a heck of a lot easier in terms of scheduling, the lunch waves, PE, and all of that, because trying to keep the high school and the middle school separate was, a really deliberate plan to do that, which creates constraints in the schedule to try to separate kids. So when you're working with all high school kids, it makes it a little bit easier to schedule the building. Use of the rooms.
I have a few questions, if it's okay.
Yeah.
My first question is, SLAM has done studies before. They typically do a usage study, not a demography study, is that right?
Well, it's kind of a combination of both. So
Okay.
we've had, they ask us for all the building plans and the square footage, and then I think they actually do the site visits as well. They can actually come in and, because it changes, so you can have a building that's utilized in one way, and then all of a sudden, this whole areas are now, maybe there's small group instruction rooms or ESL, ESL rooms, and so your capacity might change a little bit because you've changed the footprint. So they'll do that study. They'll also look at birth rates, and they pull building permits. They find out where all of the housing is, where it's coming from, the neighborhoods it's coming from. So they put all of that together in a pretty big package, and they'll present it to us. We're hoping in June. I was hoping for a little bit earlier, but June is actually not too far away at this point, and so we usually update kind of our plans based on those studies. And as you recall, the last couple of years or so, we've always outpaced the projections, even the high projections. So I'm very interested to see what they come up with, because we just don't know, and or where the population is going to be. So we can see the pattern, but we don't know if we're going to be expecting any surprises.
Yeah, that's why I was curious, because we're getting real close in that
We're
red
getting
zone there,
close.
so.
I know.
Um, And then I wanted to ask you about the freshman academy component of this, because my understanding was that was going to stay at the main DHS campus.
Yes.
So how do the numbers work in terms of students going into these pathways? Like, you're gonna have 3 academies at the new site, you're gonna have 4 academies at the main site, so it's really 5 academies, right? Because it's the freshman academies there as well.
Yeah, so that's a much bigger one, because that's the whole freshman class is in
Right.
one group. And we have them on teams to personalized learning communities, a little bit smaller.
So we're talking about like 1,000 students at that level, and then each of the academies is gonna have roughly how many students, do you think?
It will vary a little bit, but generally we've gone between 4 and 450 for like an academy, and then the individual pathways will be a little more differentiated based on the requests that we get, and then also the capacities that we have. And that will fluctuate a little bit every year, so how many sections we can offer of each section, whether we have to offer 2 or 1 in those specialized electives. So I actually wanted to, at some point, have Dan come back in because the students have made their selections and he has all of the breakouts and the calculations and how many kids got their first choice and second choice, and we're actually quite pleased with the results. So I'd love to have the team come in and present. It'd be wonderful and talk about the freshman academy curriculum and curriculum that's coming up. So that could be another meeting. But you can see all the breakouts and where all the kids are going to will be headed. Great. Yeah, sure.
Can I ask one more question?
Yep.
I want to ask a clarifying question about the slide that we saw with the original plan and then the revised plan with the numbers.
Yeah.
I think, and maybe I'm seeing something different than you are, Juanita, but when you look at that slide and it talks about, here was the original plan for the high school and here's the number that we were planning for the high school, that number jumps up, right, in the revised copy. And maybe is that what you were kind of getting at, like, so when you,
The
what was the
ones with
next
the
one?
zeros for 6A.
I think it's the next slide, maybe.
So there-
That
yeah.
was moved up.
Yeah, right, so the number just moved, there's just 2
Right.
different ways of looking at it. It's a little easier for me to explain it with the brain, just because that's kind of, pardon me for getting up, more about. But so if we had stayed with the original 6-8 model, the core staff, those main teachers, would cost $2.5 million. When you move to this high school plan, it's only $1.1 million. You're still bringing some teachers over because you can't split the baby with the high school all together. So it's a good number of staff that comes over. Same thing with the administration. You're not hiring a principal. You're hiring an assistant principal. On the para support, you only need a proportion of that. Not all of them would have to come. Other supports that could be psychologists, nurses, social workers. We don't have to share with the middle school. We extend that staff here. So overall, we're going from 120 people with needing benefits to 90, so that's the 30 FT reduction, so that number goes down significantly as well. Transportation materials would be the same, whether they're high school students or middle school students, we just leave that alone for now. And then, of course, the transportation is something we're still looking at. So it's really just the volume of staff that you no longer need by converting to a high school model.
Okay, but those are still additional high school, like the
Yes.
green numbers are still
Yes,
additional
they're still high school.
folks we have
Green
to
is
bring
now
in
high
because
school. The
we're
green is
adding that
revised if you do high
academy.
school. Correct.
Okay.
Right. Which is why we have it kind of both ways, is to look at it differently.
Okay.
Right.
Thank you.
Yeah, the number just goes up as well.
Rich, and then
Because are we allowing students, once they select a specific academy, if they don't like it, to change?
So they're allowed to change once, and it's going to be based on availability. So we hope that the research shows that when a student actually gets to pick and choose, that they tend to stay in those areas. So we're hoping the research continues to bear out. But when they're in a pathway, they're in an academy, they'll have an opportunity to switch because the core that 10th grade core class kind of allows you to go pivot in a couple different directions without losing
Just
much.
to that point, Rich, I don't know how different it might be, but when I would schedule a student at the high school for any elective, they had a window within which to make a change. After the window closed, they remained, either they made a change or they remained. So I imagine that it may be similar.
It would just be, the main thing is
Yeah.
get stuck or unhappy in something, we lose the enthusiasm of the students. So as long as they have the flexibility. to
Yeah,
do
and
it.
if it's available, so really no difference. It is, if it's open and it's available, they can.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah.
And so I was just wondering if we could share the slides.
Sure.
And then there were slides that you presented at a prior meeting in which you talked about having teacher leaders, the kind of pyramid. If you could share that. Okay, great. Then maybe I can get it.
Al, you have a question?
Yeah, I gotta tell you, I like the concept of just going straight high school up at the west side. I think that will, from the safety portion at the high school, will alleviate some of those headaches. And, you know, I'll say some other comments for later on, and it goes back to when Dan was here, and I made a comment about having that one principal being in charge and looking for the future, probably having sports there. So in Stanford, you know, the Westdale High School where I worked, we're about 2,200 students, okay? And Stanford High School is around 19 and change. So if you're looking at the ratio between, and we're in the same boat here, goes back to my original comment to Dan, is that we need to have an administrator there, a principal, and we might consider having sports there. And I know we don't have it in the budget, I got that.
We're not too far, yeah, I mean, at some point, it would be, yeah,
But I'm just saying,
yeah,
I'm a proactive guy.
yeah. Okay.
Move on.
So we skip ahead a little bit. So we had talked about the name, and I think we were kind of excited at the opportunity to name the site. However, oh, I went backwards. I ruined my dramatic effect. Oh, hold on.
Keep going forward, push forward,
Jeez.
let's move forward.
Boy, that was a real
There we go.
bungle. Okay. Okay, so the legislation for the academy goes back to 2019. It was actually even before that, in different sessions. And Toto can really speak to this probably better than I can. But, you know, through some of the inquiry around, can we make these changes? You know, is this possible? You know, the idea that we would change the name on this project midstream sends up a whole bunch of flags with the state, and they're like, well, wait, what is this? Is this, you know, is this the same project that we agreed to fund? And so it's just really not a good time to change the name. That could cause any jeopardy to us being able to move swiftly, and that we would, you know, come back and revisit the name. The name will be part of the package. We're gonna, you know, we're not gonna create a $100,000 sign on the that says Danbury Career Academy. That will be de minimis in the package with the state, and that we'll revisit the signage on this once we kind of get through the process with the state. But right now, changing the name would signal a change in the project, and it's not really a great idea. So we're gonna back off on trying to rename this project. Does that make sense? Okay. So the super exciting part, this is where I start to get a little, what floats my boat, is being able to, really conceptualize what is the next level of academy work that we can do with students that is relevant, is timely, that is based on research. And when we were coming up with the original plan, and it took 2 years to come up with, again, all of the research behind the different pathways and academies that were selected, the national career clusters where the jobs are growing, where the markets and sectors are growing, and where the need and the demand for the economy was growing. And we did have one renewable. If you look at one of the original pathways under the business and entrepreneurship, we kind of have a hanging chack. It was a renewable energy pathway that's in with sort of the business. And then we have a greenhouse over there, and we really wanted, if we could have made another academy, this is where we were going with it. But instead, we just had enough to do a pathway, and so that's what we did. So now that idea and that vision now can actually come to fruition and become its own academy. And when I tell you the amount of funding and jobs that are growing and the positioning around green and clean energy is unbelievable. There's an unbelievable growth in that area. And so the idea of having 3 pathways, clean and renewable energy, green design and environmental stewardship, and sustainable food and living systems, I think would be a really exciting opportunity for the students, and really educate them in a whole growing area that we really don't even talk that much about in schools as much as we should. So those are sort of the big ideas behind the usage of the space. Again, I'm already out there looking at grants that go along with these ideas, and I can tell you there's a lot of them for this type of opportunity. Any questions on that? Okay. So what do we do now? This is all kind of moving very quickly. And I wanna thank the city team because you guys are like so responsive and, you know, running to get information about all this, but, they're amazing. But in order for this to work, we would need, this group would have to take action to say, okay, we're okay with this, we're making these changes. Then the board would have to take action on it. We have to craft ed specifications, so I would work on that. I did it for the original one, and I worked with Antonio and his group, to revise it for the high school programming. And then the sites committee would have to take action on all that as well. It would do some official documentation with regards to that. And then we would have to lock it all in by June 5th for this to happen. And then there's a ton of work to do on their side to make this, you know, necessary changes.
That was gonna be my question. How does this impact construction as we're where we are right now?
So, the project is, I don't wanna say it's on fire, but it's on fire. We're pushing the contractors every day to order materials, get the materials in. But we've been chatting about this for a little bit, so we've already had several meetings with our contractor. And just remember, this is specific to one piece of what is a very large project. And the changes that we're looking at making are not drastic to the sense where, you know, we're gonna add an addition, take an addition out. It's really interior fit out work, which we can do relatively easily based on where we're heading with it. And the fact that we already had a considerable number of classrooms, they were all very well sized. They're gonna fit in pretty well with the high school concept. So as soon as you guys endorse making these changes and we get the ed specs updated, we're gonna continue to talk to the contractors about what changes we're making. We're even considering stalling some of the work in those areas to perfectly accommodate the ed spec that would be revised. So yeah, there'll be an impact, but it's not something that would be a showstopper.
So it's not gonna delay our move over there?
I'm sorry?
It won't delay our move?
No, it shouldn't. I'm gonna be honest with you, we did hit some unforeseen conditions at the job that has created some significant challenges, and we're working through that. But that wouldn't really be related to this change, and it really wouldn't impact that any further by the changes that you're thinking of making here.
How about financial on these changes? Will finance help
So
change?
there'll be some, so we were just taking a look at bathrooms, right? Although the bathrooms may change location-wise, the total number of bathrooms doesn't really
Got it.
change. So those are the money drivers. Like you have to scope in the project. There's a bid item allocated to that. We just have to reprogram it into a different space. So there shouldn't be that big of a budget issue. Yeah.
Thank
I
you.
mean, I know it's coming from the city's budget, I'm still a taxpayer, you know,
Yeah,
so I mean,
yeah.
it's like, you know.
Yeah, some of the unforeseen conditions obviously have a price tag to them
Gotcha.
that we're working through.
Thank you.
Any questions on this part? Go ahead, Michelle.
I'm hoping that there's some like, because I know we were having issues with keeping the middle school and the high school separate, so hopefully that alleviates some of those issues that I know that we were looking at that
Yeah.
time, right?
Yeah.
So hopefully that
Well,
helps
I mean,
with the
Gladys hit the
situation
nail
you're
on the
talking about.
head. We worked really hard to keep these two schools separate in the
Right.
side, and it was a challenge because it's a big, large building. But I think we did a pretty good job. Everybody was comfortable with it, but this is gonna make it so much easier.
That's what I was,
Yeah,
right,
so much
yeah,
easier.
okay, good, so it's almost a win.
Yeah.
In a sense, more than a win.
Yeah, that's it.
Absolutely. All right, that's it for you?
That's it for me.
Okay. Anybody have any more questions on the Career Academy?
I want to urge you guys, if you are, you know, it sounds like you're pretty serious about changing the name. Deliberate it, get it nailed down. Obviously, we can't implement it until a little later in the project, but knowing what you want to call this building will give you a little bit of a heads up to where you want to go with it, and I'm going to do what I can to try to accommodate that. Unfortunately, all the grant paperwork causes Danbury Career Academy. It would be it would be a nightmare to kind of go in midstream now and start changing the project name. But once the project's done, we can call the building and the school pretty much what we want. So yeah, I would say keep working on it, deliberate it out. When you come to a name that everybody feels comfortable with, just let me know and we'll keep that in kind of in the back of our hat.
Great, thank you.
So off the table is, a couple of weeks ago, we had a conversation and sort of a timetable. I think when Dan was here, calling it a West Side something, that no longer exists. Okay, fine.
Yeah.
Less pressure.
I just want to add a comment. We did a lot of data diving into this, and I think a lot of that speaks for itself from Dr. Casimiro's presentation. But I do want to mention the little bump we saw, right? So I know when this was originally planned, we were thinking of planning for the now, but when we looked at this, I think we're planning for a much longer term. However, when the new study comes out, I just want to say we are immediately ready and already have had conversations about expansion when it comes to middle school, if needed, about modules, classrooms that we're going to have to maybe see in about 5 years or so. So we are ready to have those conversations if there are concerns of that nature. I think otherwise this makes the most sense for the congestion we've seen at Danbury High for so many years that hopefully can be a much longer taken care of issue sort of instead of a Band-Aid. So, thank you.
Thank you. All right, so if we're done with that, we'll move on to the next item on our agenda. Like a motion.
Thank you. So this is just a quick list of some updates regarding our buildings. A quick note on our science lab renovations for this summer. We were over there today meeting with the movers. Everything is in order. The move out will begin right around June 10th, and the actual construction will start immediately as all the kids are out of the building the day following graduation. We did learn, and this is sort of still unofficial, that we are going to be receiving the HVAC grant award for about $28,000, so some good news there. A little bit of bad news, we were under budget on, we were over budget on some of the moving expenses associated with the science lab, so that's really just going to get turnkey to make sure we can have safe disposal and storage of the chemicals and all those science labs during the construction. So either way, it works out about the same. So we did a few things in light of some of the comments that we heard at the city council meeting 2 weeks ago from students. Rich and I called the pest control company and had them come out and just do an assessment to make sure that there was no issues. There were no real pest issues that were uncovered, but they found some old unoccupied nests and things that were able to clear out. So there was really nothing to be concerned about on that front. So we were pleased that nothing was found. One thing that we're excited about is the capital budget has the Ellsworth roof slated for repair, and it comes at a unique time because there's solar panels up there which will be taken down, which maybe could get repurposed into the clean energy academy. So we'll be looking at opportunities to do things like that, and we'll talk more about those solar panels and some of the complications that are going to emerge in trying to improve those. Upcoming planned projects, we have a big summer ahead of us, assuming the planned budget stays the same for Rich's department. We're going to be adding a vestibule at Millridge Primary. We're going to be replacing some cabinets at Pembroke. They have some old cabinets there that just repeated water and splash and kind of rotted out, so we're replacing that. We're going to be doing some painting in the DHS auditorium, replacing flooring in KSP. Also flooring in Millridge Primary for one of the pods, and we'll also be replacing some flooring in the west side portables. Kara had mentioned this a little while back. We found some issues, so we're going to keep working on remediation of that. We have a company that's going to be sending us an estimate to do some advanced repairs just to make sure there's no issue. That's pretty much everything with buildings at the moment.
Any questions for
Dr. Seelig, during the council meeting, the students made it very clear, and at least left me with the perception, and I'm glad you pointed out the pest control, because that will be away, so we don't have to discuss that. But they made it sound as if the high school is falling apart. They made references to an outside wall that was crumbling, they couldn't sit near it or something, inner walls were falling apart. What's being done, or is that a factual situation? Is that something that are safety issues, and is that gonna be attended to? Because literally, a good part of that conversation that we have with the students coming up, and they did a phenomenal job in being eloquent, but they made it sound as if the high school was, literally falling apart. I just want to get what is actually happening there, and then what's scheduled to be repairs, and are there any safety issues?
So, and Rich and Antonio can jump in on this too. We've gone through some of those comments and are kind of carrying out a little inspection of some of the things that were raised. Everything from the bathrooms to some places where the steps and the things are crumbling, to determine if it is just something superficial or if it is in need of greater damage. So we'll have we'll have a little bit more information on that as we continue the inspection process. But Rich and Antonio.
Richard, there was an exterior facade wall in the courtyard area where the cafeteria is, where this winter water got behind the brick and just popped the face of the bricks off. So my guys went up there and removed it because we didn't want it to potentially fall on anybody, but that wall is probably this high. So that's probably what they're making reference to. We are looking and working with the principal in that courtyard area to see how they can repurpose it, to help out with a little bit of the overcrowding. Kids love to go out there and actually eat lunch. So we're working with him on that, and we'll incorporate that wall repair with that project. But other than that, I'm not aware of this building falling down. I'd probably be the first one to know about it. We're in there quite often. Some of the pest issues, and my guys are in there working all the time in the tunnels. If you see pests, they're probably working in the tunnels. There's no evidence of it.
We have a integrated pest management set up at every school, and we have a pesticide management company, Yale Pest. They do a walkthrough of all the schools every month. They touch bases with the head custodian. If there's any areas pointed out, typically, it's more ants, sometimes cockroaches, but we really haven't had any rodent issues per se, or rat issues.
If it's possible, if you can give us a status report at some point, what I'd like to do is, it's one of the things that we don't do, we should do, and I want to respect these young people coming forth and speaking their mind. It's basically to tell them that we've listened to them and certain things are being taken care of and done, so that at least their words are heard and it doesn't go on deaf ears. Thank you very much, appreciate it.
Yes, and so Rich, if I can just piggyback on that, we have to get the communication back out to whoever brought the concern, even if it's to the building, so that they can put it in their school newspaper. We were heard. This is what happens. This is how the school takes care of it. There are monthly. If you have an issue, here's who to see in your building. Just some, so I just wanted to piggyback on that. I also want to thank you for visiting with me to Reach and Endeavor. I went back. What a difference. They had the paneled ceilings, the drop ceilings, and I didn't know, but above the drop ceiling are, what are they?
Skylights.
Skylights.
Yeah.
But it never reached the classroom because they were, so thank you. They were able to put in clear panels. And when I went in, what a difference. Thank you for following through with that. That it did make a big difference.
Yeah, well, the credit goes to Rich and his team. Mike Genti, I think, spends a lot of time over there too.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, so.
Let Mike know.
Yeah, if you will let them know. Even when I stopped in, kids are so funny, but one of the panels had fallen out. Well, of course, it fell out on its own, but you know what I'm saying? They went in and they did the silicone around, so that handled that. And I'll just tell you, prior to that, it was open. Remember, they
Yeah,
had knocked out
yeah,
the
yeah.
pen. Well, there were books there, and pens, and, right, wrappers, and so, no, but, you know, it's coming down. But thank you so much. I did have a question. You said with that's the city's capital budget
For the roof project,
for the
yeah,
roof
that's the
project?
capital.
And so, but that, is that the one where the monies are coming from the state as, if it's approved on May 8th?
Yeah, that one won't be a state project, that's just straight
We
city.
would go to bond for it.
Okay. Is that the only thing that they will go to bond for? I know what was on there also were the walls at King Street Primary.
That's a separate state bond that we're
Oh.
looking at as well, yeah. The city bonds 3 million of our own every year for city capital projects, and that's what we chose to do this year. One project happened to be 3 million, so that's how we worked out.
Okay, so that will be the roof at
The roof.
Ellsworth. And you talked about the vestibule going up, that's our project, right?
That's our
That would be
project,
ours,
that's our
yeah.
project.
Are there other schools that you are considering that are in line for vestibules?
Yes.
Is South Street School one of them?
Uh,
Please put them on your list.
We can put it out.
Wherever, wherever priority. If they
Over
could-
time, we wanna get them all, so.
I know.
Yeah, we could,
Just if we can keep them on our radar. When I went in to visit and you get buzzed in, if the resource officers can go, his desk is right there, but if he's somewhere else,
yeah.
the secretary has to determine whether or not she's gonna buzz you in based on who's standing there. And her office cannot see outside.
Right, okay.
So,
Yeah,
I
that's a
just
quirky
think-
setup.
yeah, just
Yeah.
because of the setup. So I just wanted to mention that. And I think that's it for me right now.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Anybody else? Questions? Michelle?
Just one quick one is, I know that we had talked about security, some measures that we were taking. Some of it was just striping, like things that we could do quickly. I know the vestibules and stuff like that was some of that. Where have we moved on that front? I haven't heard much on that, I'm sure.
Yeah,
We're doing as much as we can.
yeah, we've done a number of things with signage and, everything from welcoming signs. I think we were in the process of, we've gotten a few of them up, but just like visitor parking designations, things like this. So the applicant knows this is the visitor, and when they left the building, their car left with them, and, they didn't
Right.
go somewhere else. So, yeah, we've been slowly chipping away at that list. Something else we're gonna be pushing on this summer, especially if we have any unused funds from, anything we were able to squeeze out of the remainder of some of these other projects.
Because I know some of those weren't so expensive and you
Yeah.
could tackle,
Some of them are, yeah.
security.
Yeah.
And then the other thing was you had mentioned that we were going to, or had brought on just a couple of weeks ago online, the service industry, like this, the aging report on open warranty items, I'm gonna call it, between the city and
Yeah.
the Board of Education, which is where all the communication falls into this dark hole. And we were apparently switched over to a new program. I haven't heard what it's called, we haven't been updated, can you please speak to that?
Yeah, so the new work order system, it is called Operations Hero. We've been rolling with it now for about 2.5 months. Rich and his team work with it daily. The guys are out in the field, they get it on their phone or their iPad, and, they mark it, completed or in progress or ordering a part. The principals have been on it. I haven't heard any questions about, the old one we had, it was all manually done. It was a kind of Excel spreadsheet, and, we had to manually update it every couple of weeks. So the principals have been logging in, kind of looking at their work orders, and it's just really sort of improved efficiency.
We as a committee get a copy of what that report looks
Yeah,
like?
sure.
Is that something that we
Yeah.
can get at every site's kind of update meeting
Yeah.
or a report that we could log into? Because
Yeah, it's,
that's where the communication
yeah, it's
is.
like a dashboard. There's all
Right.
sorts of different reports you can run to, so we could figure out what that looks like.
Yeah, because
Yeah.
that's where all the communication, that's basically what I'm wondering. Like, we were talking about bathrooms that were several years not talking, just issues that, you and I have spoken about, like, have we been able to tackle them? Has something kind of risen to the top so that we can address those? Thank you.
And to speak speak about the work order
Yes.
program and to be a little transparent. I have sat on the mayor's advisory committee for the educational part of it. And one of the things I've met with the city sites, I forgot his name, and also met with Mike and Rich. One of the things that we will be bringing up from that committee is the two different systems. How much is our system costing us? Can you give me a round,
I don't have the number.
and then the city's paying for their system, and yet, is there a system that we would be able to combine, number one, to save money, and number two, to be able to see what are the work orders that go in that are city responsibility, work orders that go in that are school responsibilities. I was also looking for the date it went in, who it went to, who sent it, who it went to, when it was completed. Because there are a number of work orders in there, and who does it go back to? Who's notified that it's done? So that's kind of what I was looking for in a work order program. And so we are going to be recommending, as part of that committee, to the city to look into how can we save money by working with the same work order system.
Anything else?
I know this is a little off of the agenda, but I know the last board meeting, we had a parent very concerned about usage of bathrooms at the high school. Is there a possibility you can address that? Has that been taken care of?
Yeah, so, this was something that kind of fell into the people services arena, so it wasn't really a facilities related
I
issue.
figured that.
Yeah, so Kelly can probably speak more directly to it. What I can say from the facility side is this is not, this is not an issue unique to Danbury. You see it happening all across the
All over the
country.
state, yeah.
And one thing that schools have started to do is to just change the way bathrooms are set up, right? So instead of a boys' bathroom and a girls' bathroom, there are, there's sort of private stalls, right? It's not like a stall where, the top and the bottom, but they have these sort of private, stalls, and then there's a sort of communal sink area. There's been a lot of thinking around how to reorganize and restructure bathrooms for schools, for the schools of the future. And some of the new construction that we've seen going up in places like, I just saw one in Minnesota, had these, and they've had some really great results. But of course, that's more capital, that's more money, and so that's something we would certainly, push on at the state level, and hopefully we get some money and be able to start making these sorts of changes.
Where I work in Stanford, what they've done is they allocated 2 bathrooms as unisex, but they have a key. They have a key. And the reason I also bring it out to address it, Tony, is that, you guys you better understand what's the construction in a new building, and maybe that's something we're gonna need to look at, in the new building.
Yeah, there's some trending going out there that speaks to exactly what Mike was talking about, but it's all over the place. Everybody has a different take on it. I tell you, the whole industry is struggling on how to deal with this bathroom situation. So we're kind of sitting back waiting for some guidance documents to come out where somebody endorses sort of a philosophy. You guys can endorse it, and then we can implement it as a design feature in our buildings. But it is, everybody's talking about it.
I understand that.
Yeah, everybody's talking about it.
Yep.
Anything
I mean, we
else?
have students in our place are asking the faculty for their key to go into the faculty's bathroom. That's how bad it's getting.
All right. If
So
there's
thank you.
nothing else,
That's it.
I'm just gonna jump on what you're saying here. It is a big concern, and then we are designing and building for the future, and these are questions being asked today, especially with, our own position in this nation, in the country regarding sports, right? And how are we dealing with the locker rooms and, that issue. I understand we might be waiting for guidance, but I don't think as a parent, I'm looking for answers. And if we're designing a building, I would like that conversation now, as I'm glad Al brought it up. It's definitely something that I think we should be discussing now.
well, I think if it's something that
Yeah.
pertains to facilities, we can you know, we could talk about adding anything preschool services. We'll save that for a different committee, not necessarily sites. So that I'll defer that over to Gladys to see where she wants to move that discussion.
For the new construction we're talking about?
Yeah, that is
Right,
what you're
that's what I'm
referring
talking
to?
about, the new
Yeah, so if we're dealing
construction.
with anything, the construction or sites related, we'll keep that within this committee. I don't want to, you know, kind of go past what is in our purview. So if there's nothing else pertaining to this, we're gonna, I guess, get a May committee meeting on the books and a June committee meeting on the books. And then, just for our committee, I'd like to get more regular sites meetings, and I think that'll help us get regular follow-up and get a regular system going. These committees were already pre-scheduled and they were really sporadic. So, if we can do monthly meetings, I think that'll help everybody kind of keep up on things that we want answered and follow up with, that type of thing. Okay? So, there's nothing else? Yes,
Yeah, I'll
sir?
make a motion to adjourn.
Okay, second? All right, meeting is adjourned,
Thank you.
6:30. Thank you.